Welcome to our study of Jakob Mipham's Sword of Wisdom. And we're approaching the conclusion of our study here. I would like to thank you all for your participation. And it makes me very happy that all of you are studying this, because this is where we can see really the validity of what we encounter in the Buddhist teaching, both in terms of, you could say, the diagnosis of samsara, and also the validity of the treatment, the path. And specifically with this teaching, we have highlighted the value of the two truths, understanding how our relative conventional experience, it unfolds, and the nature of it, and also understanding from where then suffering originates, and the validity then of the practice that takes us into a realization of what we then call the ultimate truth. So we do this on the basis of not just, or rather not at all, not at all on the basis of belief, but on the basis of our investigation. You know, you often hear this expression, well, it has been scientifically proven, or it has been, proven mathematically, and so forth. And that lends tremendous authority to whatever the statement might be. And that's what we're doing here. We've operated with reasoning that is based on direct observation and logical inference. There's not anything that we're doing in the Buddhist path that has to do with embracing some sort of strange ideas. Of course, when we encounter Asian cosmology and the various, you could say, categories of realms, existences, and so on, yes, that's very often sort of strange to us. But that doesn't particularly have anything to do more than just this particular cosmologies that are culturally based. But when it comes to the path, when it comes to understanding the nature of samsara and the nature of our reality, that's not cultural. That's on the basis of us actually investigating reality, and particularly then highlighting how the experiencer, the primary component of our, or you could say the basis of all our experience, namely mind, it gets itself into two modalities. One is samsara, confusion and suffering, and it can also be free of that. And that's what we refer to as liberation, nirvana. And so there's an understanding on the basis of that of insight into reality as we conventionally perceive it, and also how we ultimately perceive it. So that's where the science that we're investigating here goes far beyond just trying to understand the nature of things, but it goes right down into the depth of where does our suffering originate from, and identifies that it comes from entangling ourselves in confused projections. But it also then specifies the path to extract ourselves from that confusion. So this is where we are, and this is something that benefits not just us, but we intend to apply this for the benefit of all sentient beings. And that's our motivation for engaging with this path. So we'll begin with supplicating the author of the present work that we're studying, Jakob Mipham Rinpoche. Through the blessing of awareness emptiness, Manjushri Kumara, you open the expanse of wisdom and its 8 minds of confidence, thus mastering the vast treasuries of transmission and realization. Mipham Manjushri Gosha, I supplicate you. So in terms of the material that we've covered, I'm going to give you a brief overview. I'll go more into details with that next time. But basically, traditional Buddhist texts, particularly here in the Indo-Tibetan tradition, it operates with what we call virtuous or good in the beginning, middle, and end. So we have the text. Classically, a text would consist of these 3 components. The first section, which is incredibly brief. It's the homage and commitment, or just a few verses. But then what we mainly have covered now, and what really has been the subject matter, is the study of the two truths, and that's where we've covered this in terms of reasonings, and that's where we've operated with the four reasonings. That's what mainly we've been studying, and the four reliances. These have been the two main sections, and that what comes out of that is then confidence. And this is not confidence in the sense of arrogance, but it's confidence on the basis of, yes, we can see what there is. If you think that there's a burglar downstairs, you might stay upstairs and say, well, let's pretend or hope there's no burglar downstairs. But if you go down, switch on the light, and you see there is nobody there, it was just a cat, you have confidence. You have confidence in that there is, in fact, no burglar. You can sleep peacefully. And similarly, also, when we approach the path, we're learning something which we're engaging with an insight. Just like if you study medicine, you're engaging into an insight into where does illness come from and how can it be remedied. And you're presumably studying, hopefully with you could say, an authentic methodology of medicine that you have confidence in on the basis of what you can observe, what you base on your reasoning and the results. And we have in the Buddhist tradition, we have great results with the path for 2,500 years. And the great results have really come on the basis of individuals engaging the path with a clarity and confidence in what they're doing. So that's where we establish our insight here, perspective on the basis of reasoning that then brings us to understanding how we, and that's what we're looking at here, how actually we approach the whole subject matter. And that's where we could say the teaching is approached in terms of understanding or relying on the teachings, not the teacher, relying on the meaning, not on the words, relying on the definitive meaning, not on the provisional meaning, and relying on wisdom, not consciousness. So we're presently in that section called the Four Reliances. And there we are presently looking at relying on the definitive meaning, not on the provisional meaning. And with that, we mean that which is actually, you could say, the reality of things. We could sometimes operate with, you could say, conventions that are real for us. Just like, for example, if you're with a child who's having a nightmare, then you might say, then the child says, there's a boogeyman there's a boogeyman in the room. I feel afraid. And then you go over and you hold the child in your arms and you nurture them, give them a sense of safety. And we don't begin to reason with them, saying, you know, there is no boogeyman. For the time being, it seems to be very real. And that's where we talk about then the Buddha also accommodating our reality and speaking from a place of how we experience things. We do believe that New York City exists. We do believe in left and right, up and down. Ultimately, these are just conceptual constructions, imputations, labels. But for the time being, we think it's very real. That's what Sansa Rinpoche refers to as the Cinderella teaching, or you'd say the sort of the reality that we presently operate with. So, but at the same time, what of course is intended with the path is that because we suffer on the basis of our confused projections and our belief in our confused projections, we are aligning ourselves with the definitive meaning, and that is the nature of the path. The path is the skillful means that enable us to rely on an insight into reality. So that's where we have the various teachings that provide the methods, such as the prajnas of hearing, reflecting, and meditating, and then on the basis of meditating, shamatha, and particularly then vipassana, the way in which we accommodate our the reality of who we are, calming the mind, and then investigating and having insight into the nature of reality. That's how the general Buddhist path operates in terms of strengthening our prajna, our insight, and also integrating this within our life on, for example, the basis of the paramitas. Now, we have a particularly profound approach in the Vajrayana, which we've looked at in terms of understanding how relative and ultimate truth exists in terms of purity and in terms of equality. And so that's where we have a particularly profound path that immediately aligns us and enables us to engage in a yoga that aligns us with the existing nature of phenomena of whatever there is, and particularly in terms of what we then call the unity of appearance and emptiness, the fact that phenomena appear, yet they have no intrinsic ultimate reality. And this insight is then integrated through the yoga practice of the Vajrayana that sees how phenomena from the very outset are intrinsically pure, and as such abide as this unity of appearance and emptiness, which we integrate on the basis of the methodologies of the four empowerments. And that's where we've looked at, for example, the first empowerment, which is seeing the purity of ourselves, seeing the purity of others, seeing the purity of our reality, which is referred to as the development stage practice, sadhana practice, where we integrate this vision. And this is further then integrated on the basis of working with the more subtle aspects of our experience, on the basis of our body, on the basis of our energy in our body. And then finally, the most subtle way of integrating this is through recognizing the intrinsic purity that never moves from the ground of our being, which is then the yoga of Mahamudra, Hatha Yoga, and so forth. So these are ways in which we align ourselves with the already spontaneously present purity of our reality. And that's the Vajrayana. In the text then, so that's where we're relying on the definitive meaning, not on the provisional meaning. And the Vajrayana is particularly profound in that it integrates then the definitive meaning within our perceptions. So it says here, without contradiction, one penetrates the essence of the prajna paramita, the creation stage, the completion stage, and the great completion by means of the four styles of interpretation through literal, general, hidden, and ultimate meanings. So we've covered how the teaching is presented sometimes in a literal way, sometimes in a, you could say, indirect way or hidden way, and also in an ultimate way. And so the various teachings that we approach, they need to be interpreted according to these so-called four styles of interpretation. But this then is where we apply these then to the various teachings that we encounter. Then it says, through that, highly intelligent ones become confident through certainty about the meaning. These heirs of the Buddha hold the inexhaustible treasure of the Dharma and the victory banner of the teachings of scripture and realization. So without sort of engaging any kind of snobism with regards to what is intelligent and what is not, we simply just mean that here we apply ourselves really to the best of our capacity in terms of understanding things. And when there is an understanding, yes, then there's a clear mind. And it's on the basis of that we have certainty about what we're doing. We engage with the path with, you could say, some degree of professionalism, certainty, capability. So in doing so, then one is able to comprehend what it is the Buddha taught and provide this insight or share this insight with others. So commenting on verse 78, Khenpo Palden Sherp says, the meaning found through this investigation is applied through in the secret mantra Vajrayana, of the two stages, the creation stage and the completion stage. So some of us might be familiar with these terms. The creation stage essentially being the recognition of the purity of phenomena, and the completion stage being settling the mind free from any reference point. But completion stage, again, it operates with what we call completion stage with reference and without. And that's where completion stage engages, we say, the subtle aspects of working with our experience, with our being, through the practices of yoga. And then we also have the completion stage, which is free from any reference points, which are then teachings like Mahamudra and the Mahasandhi. So it says, in teachings, when the creation stage of the relative level is illustrated in relation to the body, there are teachings such as the illusoriness of all phenomena. Teachings such as the paramitas and the illusory divine body also belong to the creation stage. So we can understand the Vajrayana creation stage as essentially reflecting the truth that we have in the paramita teachings and the truth of understanding this unity of appearance and emptiness, the illusory nature of phenomena. Phenomena definitely appear, but it does not have the solidity that we attribute to it, so we refer to it as illusory. But that's where the creation stage integrates this perspective. And it says, for the completion stage, the psychophysical aggregates, meaning the skandhas, are taught to be the illusory divine body, which is the energetic mind. So that's where we understand this body more in terms of the energy, in terms of the prana, the subtle aspects of our being that is governed, even though it's not manifest. We're very much governed in terms of prana or energy, chi or whatever we might call it, but we all have this sensitivity to energy that is very much associated also with our mind. And the completion stage practice of yoga, completion stage practice with reference point, focuses on working with this energy. It says the dynamic energy of suchness, which is the basis of appearance, is taught to be the fundamental ground. So that's where we relate to the energy of the body in terms of its actual original condition. And this we do particularly through the practices of yoga, such as the 6 yogas or Tummo practice. However we might do it, and this is where we bring the energy of clarity, not the energy of our ordinary confused sort of fidgeting or moving about, but really connecting with the fundamental sanity that's intrinsic to our energy. It says, in relation to this, there are very subtle timeless awareness channels, timeless awareness winds, and timeless awareness elements. So the translator here is using the term timeless awareness for what we very often translate simply as wisdom. And that's where we talk about ordinary sentient beings. We possess what we call channels, winds, and elements on the basis of karma. It's simply just where we, in our unconsciousness, on the basis of our blackout and stumbling in the unconsciousness of the storehouse, consciousness, alaya, vijnana, we act out our samsara. But here, we are connecting with the intrinsic purity of our body and our prana and our essence. And that's where we then talk about the wisdom nadis, wisdom prana, and wisdom bindu. So that's where we then refer to these here as subtle elements, the subtle timeless awareness channels, this timeless awareness. It should be timeless awareness winds and timeless awareness elements. In addition, there are the pairs of earth and water, fire and wind, space and mind, which are sequentially in union as the three kayas and are spontaneously present as the essence of the three vajras of body, speech, and mind. All these are part of the completion stage with characteristics. Now, within the language of the completion stage with characteristics, which is yoga, there are ways in which we understand how the elements, they abide in terms of the three kayas, and how in terms of our subtle body, then the three kayas are spontaneously present. In terms of also what we call the three vajras, the indestructible qualities of our physicality, our energy, our speech, and our mind. So this is a little bit specific to the language of yoga and the science of yoga. So that's the completion stage with characteristics. And then the Khenpo says, then there are the teachings on the completion stage of Dzogchen, Hatha Yoga, or Mahasandhi, great perfection. It says, within the very subtle fundamental mind, there is spontaneously present radiant awareness. This is reflected outward as five lights, having the aspects of the five wisdoms. All the coarse and subtle energies of the energetic mind expand and contract from this ground. The ground of mind is spontaneously present luminosity, awareness, emptiness, the great completion, or the great completeness, or Dzogchen. So this refers to the most subtle aspect of yoga, the fourth empowerment, associated with what we sometimes refer to as wisdom, or Rigpa, sometimes TGS, Tamal Gishepa, and essentially the ways in which the uncorrupted, pure mind is engaged as the path, the way that we engage the undiluted, original purity of the mind. So this we do through the practice of the great completeness, or Dzogchen, which is then the completion stage without characteristics, beyond reference points. So then it says, returning to the overall discussion of the four styles of interpretation. That's what's the theme here, and in terms of us relying on the definitive meaning, understanding what's the point behind the practices that we're doing. So that's where he says, after determining the word meaning, the general meaning, the hidden meaning, and the ultimate meaning, one should apply them. For example, these four styles of interpretation can be illustrated by the luminosity of the ultimate completion stage. So we talk about luminosity as a key way in which we engage the practice of meditation. We talk about, for example, Wurzel Dzogpa Chenpo, or the luminous great perfection. So that's what's talked about here. And then what does that imply? The Khenpo says the meaning of the word luminosity is taught in the Prajnaparamita Sutra. We have this saying where it says, mind, there is no mind. The nature of mind is luminosity. There's a famous quote from the Prajnaparamita, which Sansa Khenpo Rinpoche has quoted in his teaching. And then that's the meaning. The general meaning is the practice of the creation stage as luminosity. Again, that's where we relate to our perceptions, our phenomena in terms of their intrinsic purity, which consists of our reality, which is permeated by the absence of anything that we can grasp, and yet the luminous quality of appearances. So that's integrated through the practice of the creation stage, through the practices of deity, mantra, and wisdom. The hidden meaning is the luminosity of the completion stage, induced by the four levels of emptiness: empty, very empty, greatly empty, and universally empty. I have to say, I'm not sure what it exactly refers to here. Not familiar with these terms, but obviously what we are talking about here are ways in which yoga practice connects with increasing subtle and, you could say, more authentic aspects of emptiness. Sometimes also we refer to these in terms of the four joys. Then we say the ultimate meaning is luminosity in accordance with Dzogchen, the great completeness, which is the second part of the completion stage practice. That's the ultimate meaning then of luminosity. So when we talk luminosity, then we can understand this in terms of, or rather when we talk about luminosity as we engage with it as our, you could say, a key component of our practice, that's where we need to understand the ramifications, and also how, when we're practicing one particular practice, how the nature of this practice applies to all other teachings. So that's where we can see the term luminosity as it applies in terms of the various levels of teaching. Then the Khenpo says, this is the realization of the fundamental natural state in which all phenomena are primordially empty, together with the realization of the originally pure timeless awareness of the fourth empowerment. So we can see the profundity then of this term luminosity. Again, this is where our understanding of the term luminosity is clarified on the basis of these four styles of interpretation. Then it says, by practicing without, commenting on verse 79, by practicing without contradiction the key points of the profound meaning through these four styles of interpretation, one gains certainty in the profound meaning of sutras and tantras. One is confident and able to use one's own intelligence without relying on anyone else. So this is about where we begin to gain some autonomy. We take ownership of the Dharma. We begin to see how it's relevant in terms of all our aspects of our experience and all aspects of our world, our reality. Highly intelligent ones who have reached the point where no one could rob them of their confidence become the great heart children of the victorious ones who inherit the kaya of the Buddha. So on the basis of this, then, when we reach this insight, then we have the confidence that enable us to fully uphold the Buddha's teaching. It says, having been taught the Dharma of the 3 yanas or 9 yanas, they hold the storehouse of the great treasure of the inexhaustible sacred Dharma. So here you could say the Khenpo is finishing off this topic with a bit of a flourish in terms of highlighting the immense value of what this, you could say, the ramifications of this degree of certainty with regards to the teaching. These bodhisattva mahasattvas, take care of all the remaining disciples of the Buddha by teaching them the Dharma of Scripture, which is subsumed in the 12 branches of the Buddha's speech and the 6 tantras. They also teach the Dharma of realization, which is subsumed in the 3 higher trainings and the 2 stages of Vajrayana practice. So such beings engage in the highest form of insight, in which they're able to teach and in which they integrate the perspectives of the perspective of the definitive meaning. Then it says, in this way, these individuals hold the great victory banner, which is all victorious over whatever is not conducive to the precious teachings of Scripture and realization. So such individuals, they're able to completely eliminate confusion. So that really takes us to the end of this discussion. Rely on the definitive meaning, not on the provisional meaning. I hope you're okay. I'm probably going to go a little bit over time today and also next time, because I'd like to finish before Christmas. So I hope you're up for that. So I'm going to be continuing probably a little bit longer than normal and taking the questions a little bit later. So now we're arriving at the 4th reliance. Rely on wisdom, not on consciousness. So this brings about also the result, like we looked at earlier here, the result of what we're doing here in terms of the detailed explanation that enables us to understand conventional and absolute truths, or Yeah, the two truths. So we've gone through the reasonings, the reliances, and this fourth reliance will take us to the result of all of this, which is the great treasures of confidence. Again, like we talked about before, simply just the certainty about what we're doing and the nature of reality. So rely on wisdom, not on consciousness. For the fourth of the four reliances, the root text says, when practicing the definitive meaning, do not rely on consciousness, the perceiving mind and what it perceives, which depend on words and concepts. Rely instead on non-dual wisdom. So this is where we step beyond we step beyond the ordinary confused mind and engage this non-dual wisdom, the intrinsic nature of our mind, intrinsic nature of our being, which is free from the artificial constructs of subject, object, this and that. And it says that which has reference points is the mind with a nature of apprehending the apprehended. Conceiving of things in this way is false. In reality, there is no actual contact. So what we've established now, not on the basis of just being enamored with the Buddha, but on the basis of investigation, is how the ways in which we construct this duality of subject and object, apprehending and apprehended, understanding that in the reality, why it appears that there is a subject and object, these are artificial constructs. This is not on the basis of faith, but on the basis of the reasoning that we've been through. Whether something is conceived of as an entity or a non-entity, or as both or neither, no matter how it is focused on, there are still reference points. The sutras say that whatever is grasped through conceptualization is the domain of demons. Conceptualization cannot be destroyed by negating or affirming. But if one sees without removing or adding anything, there is liberation. So we establish the lack of intrinsic reality in both the subject and object, and we do so not in terms of developing a new philosophy, but in terms of simply ridding ourselves of our ordinary reference point, our ordinary ways of conceptualizing phenomena. And that doesn't mean that all of a sudden we should then start having this new idea, oh, there's no this, there's no that, and blah, blah, blah. It's really just ridding ourselves of our confusion, our confused assumptions, but not with the intention to give us a new dogma or philosophy, but simply to free us. And that's where this conceptualization that we ordinarily operate with, we can dismantle the assumptions that are intrinsic to it, but it doesn't mean that we now equip ourselves with new concepts. And that's where the cause of suffering, our conceptualization, is never going to be something that we ultimately get over through negating something or establishing something as real or not real, but it's simply just about us settling in beyond any conceptualization whatsoever, not as an idea, but on the basis of seeing clearly with vipassana, on the basis of the practice of the path, on the basis of experience. So that's where we then settle into this nature, which is beyond removing or adding anything. But we need to understand, as long as we operate with conceptualization, the language that's used here is, this is the domain of demons. Not in the sense of it's bad in the sort of moralistic sense, but just that this is what's making us sick. So it's what drives our confusion. So anyway, the Khenpo now then discusses this in terms of under why dualistic consciousness is deluded. He says, when practicing according to one's own realization of the definitive meaning, do not rely on consciousness, which has the nature of the perceiving mind and the perceiving objects that depend on words and concepts. Instead, rely on timeless awareness being wisdom, being the nature of mind, TGS, Tamal Geshepa, the wisdom is introduced on the basis of the blessing of the teacher, on the basis of the sort of perfection and processing of the path. And that is what we need to rely on. This is beyond the duality of perceiver and perceived. Commenting on 81, the mind is deluded when it apprehends outer objects and uses reference points like empty, not empty, both, or neither. And this is how we very often refer to things in terms of there being something, there not being something, and operating with these notions that there is something, that there is, on the basis of there being something, then we sometimes have nothing. The point is, phenomena have from the very origin never come into existence. And that's why any way that we conceptualize this in terms of existing or not existing or however, simply misses the mark. The Khenpo says, conceiving of things in this way is false. In the reality of the true nature beyond concepts, duality cannot withstand analysis because subjects and objects never actually connect or make contact. So if we investigate, we actually never have anything that achieves any true existence. And as such, the perceiver and the objects, they're not actually what we sometimes refer to as, what is it again? Causal closure. That's right. Where we see on one hand consciousness and then object. Since neither of these, when investigated, when they're subjected to what we call analysis or ultimate analysis, none of them actually have any reality other than simply just that there is projection. But there's never actually a true perceiver and a true object. Conventionally, yes, but that's where we're confused. We think that our conventional perception is valid, and that's where we're presently challenging our conventional understanding or conventional idea of subject and object. So that's where, if we investigate, we won't find anything that actually constitutes subject and object. So then Khenpo, commenting on 82, says, why is this so? Whether one conceives of something as an entity or negates that and conceives of it as a non-entity, or as both an entity and a non-entity, or as neither an entity nor a non-entity, there is movement of the mind, conceptual reference points. So that's where we habitually think of things in terms of existing or not existing, when in fact nothing has ever really come into existence. So these ways in which we conceive of them, they are really just conceptual reference points. They're just ways in which we think of things. And we can then get all philosophical and we can say, well, things, they're sort of both there and then they're not there, or they're neither there nor not there. But all the time, we're just trying to pigeonhole realities and label them according to our concepts. So then, commenting on verse 83, the Khenpo quotes the Sutra of the Manifold Display of Manjushri that states, by having reference points, whatever is conceived of as an entity or a non-entity is an object of grasping, which places it in the domain of demons. So demons here, maras, are what confuse us. I'm not talking about demons in a sort of a Marvel comic way or superstitious way, but simply just on the basis of the diagnosis of what it is that causes our confusion. The same sutra also says, to whatever extent there are reference points, to whatever extent there are mental formations, to that same extent there is demonic activity, meaning there's confused activity. So this then covers why dualistic consciousness is deluded. This is also something that's very much key within the study of Madhyamika, the middle way. Then it says, seeing with non-dual wisdom, completely free from perceiver and perceived, naturally occurring, timeless awareness is natural luminosity. Since all fabrications of the four extremes are brought to an end, timeless awareness is said to be supreme. So again, we're here talking timeless awareness as this wisdom, which is the subject of Mahamudra and Mahasandhi meditation. Just like somebody blind from birth looking at the form of the sun, immature beings have not previously seen this. No matter how they imagine it, they don't actually know it. So immature beings feel anxious. So that's where this is something that is hidden from most individuals. And as a result, we suffer from this insecurity that results in samsara. However, by means of authentic scriptures, reasoning that refutes all extreme views, and the Guru's key instructions, just like a blind man gaining sight, one will see it for oneself. So here we're talking on one hand to educate ourselves, to lift our sort of level of sophistication, be sort of subject our assumptions to a rigorous analysis, and particularly through the blessing and through the insight and through the blessing and the instructions of a spiritual guide, particularly then the Vajrayana Guru, then one will see something that wasn't seen before, and it will become personal experience. So it says, commenting on 84, then the Khenpo says, in this context, since one is free from all the perceived objects and the perceiving subject, there is no more grasping and fixation. This is not a blank emptiness. It is luminosity, the knowing quality of spontaneously, naturally occurring timeless awareness. It naturally brings to an end all conceptual constructs of the four extremes, like existence and non-existence. Therefore, the Buddha praised timeless awareness as supreme. For instance, the precious abridged Prajnaparamita Sutra states, no matter how many words for things are expressed in the universe, when one genuinely transcends the arising of all of them, what is attained is none other than sacred, deathless, timeless awareness. This is Prajnaparamita, the perfection of wisdom. Commenting on verse 85, to give an example, people blind from birth have never been able to see the form of the sun. Similarly, immature samsaric beings have not previously experienced seeing the true nature free from reference points. To whatever extent they lack that experience, to that same extent, they are just imagining it. Without confidently knowing it, immature beings cannot access the true nature beyond fabrication, and this makes them anxious. So, as long as there's not seeing, then we're essentially stumbling, and that's where we operate with this fundamental, we could say, existential angst that is the core of our ignorance. Then it says, however, when the true nature is resolved through the three types of genuine and special valid cognition, and then one meditates, one will realize the natural state just as it is. And this is where, on the basis of this, what we looked at here, which is the genuine valid cognition, which is what we can see, what we can infer, and what we can, where we also operate with trusting those who have gone before us, what we call authoritative statements. We then realize the nature of the nature of mind, the nature of our reality. The Vajrayana Tantra states, whoever comprehends something by means of valid cognition, scripture, reasoning, and the key instructions will internalize what is known. Ah, yes, okay. This is actually slightly different from what I was saying, because that's where we're talking about the ways that we rely on scripture which is the authority of those that have gone before us, the Buddha's teachings. But then on the basis of reasoning then consists of these two kinds of that we've looked at before, namely, or rather there's a number of them actually, there's four. We would talk about what is the direct perception, what we can logically infer, what is the and the third one then being valid yogic cognition. So these are three kinds of reasonings. So then together with scripture there are four, but these then combined with key instructions, and that's where we have the teacher's instructions that might just say something very simple. It could be just, what is the nature of your mind? Look at your mind, or something just incredibly simple. The key instructions will internalize what is to be known. To enlarge on this verse, there is the valid cognition of the authentic scriptures, which are the definitive meaning of the Buddha's words. There is the valid cognition of reasoning, which refutes all extreme views that differ from the positions taught by the great masters. This is very sweet. This is, of course, the Khenpo who's very, you could say, embedded and situated within a tradition in which there could never be anything higher than what has been taught by the great masters. And we could say it's a bit like saying, okay, the great masters taught this, and what we then do with our valid cognition is actually see, is this valid, what the great masters taught before? Oh yeah, but we do this on the basis of our reasoning. So that's where, on the basis of our insights, then we can see, oh yeah, they're right. And then he says, and there is the valid cognition of the key instructions of a genuine guru with lineage instructions. So that's where we have the pith instructions that we would receive to practice meditation. Or rather, key instructions that enable us to integrate this insight, both in meditation and post-meditation. These bear witness to the fact that when wise beings practice these instructions and meditate on them, they give rise to uncontrived devotion for these instructions and attain liberation. Just like the blind gaining sight, transcendent timeless awareness arises in their minds. It is similar to comparing metaphoric wisdom, a conceptual semblance of experiencing the true nature when one is still an ordinary person, with the extraordinary certainty that arises when one actually sees the truth. So we can, to a large extent, understand teachings on what we can on the level of simply just on the basis of our reasoning, seeing the truth of the absence, for example, the absence of intrinsic existence within phenomena. And that's where we can have a conceptual idea of wisdom. We can have a conceptual idea of reality. But then again, that's very different from having a non-conceptual, actual direct experience. Having then that extraordinary certainty, the Khenpo says, at that point, one has a direct perception of the true nature which clearly appears. So then again, still within this relying on wisdom, knowledge, consciousness, then the third one is the resulting realization. At this time, those with devotion taste the nectar of the Dharma, of the Tathagata, and their eye of increasing joy turns towards the wisdom body of the Sugatas. At this time, all phenomena, without exception, are resolved in the state of equality. One gains the inexpressible confidence of certainty and skill in explaining the inexhaustible treasure of the Dharma. So on the basis of beginning to have this insight, then we begin to, then such beings would begin to have direct experience of awakening, the body of the Sugatas, and having then a complete certainty in the nature of reality, they're able to guide others. By gaining expertise in the way the two truths are, one sees the reality of the two truths in union. When this happens, it is like removing the husk to reveal the essence. One knows how to endeavor in all skillful means. So that's where understanding how things are perceived and how things actually are not seen in conflict. And that's where then one is able to endeavor using all aspects of relative truth as skillful means, combining it with the absolute truth. Since the Sugatas know about skillful means, all their methods are said to be a genuine path. This is why one gives rise to irreversible confidence in one's teachers and their teaching. So again, we have an extraordinary path really that is skilled in terms of eliminating confusion, that has been taught from a place of complete insight. By actualizing supreme, non-dwelling, timeless awareness, one is naturally liberated from the extremes of cyclic existence and peace. Continuous, effortless, great compassion boundlessly pervades all directions and times. So on the basis of this insight, this realization of wisdom, then one is freed from, on one hand, confusion, and also the still subtle confusion of just wanting to remain in a peaceful place. So on the basis of that, then effortlessly, without abiding in neither samsara or nirvana, there is spontaneously all-pervasive the activity of benefiting others. So the Khenpo says, at this time, those with confident devotion taste the nectar of the excellent Dharma of the Tathagata, and their eye of increasing joy sees the true nature in the heart. This is not the ordinary eye, which is fragile like a bubble, but the supreme eye of timeless awareness, which one pointedly turns toward and sees the Dharmakaya body of the Sugatas. So with that insight, then there is this awakening of what essentially we in popular language refer to as the third eye. And this where the Tibetan term, what is it again? Chuburkimik, which is the ordinary eye. That doesn't see much except just, the field of our ordinary karmic vision. But here we're talking about something that is beyond subject and object, and that sees the Dharmakaya. That is then the eye of wisdom, of timeless awareness. Also at this time, commenting on 88, one perfects the realization that all phenomena, with all their differences, samsara and nirvana, happiness and suffering, good and bad, and so on, are inseparable in the taste of equality. One gains the confidence that comes from certainty, which is inexpressible in words and cannot be suppressed by anyone in the world, even the gods. So this is where then we have a confidence that can never be challenged. From this point on, one becomes more and more proficient in explaining the entire treasure of the Dharma, the inexhaustible teachings of the three yanas. As it is said, when one gains the confidence of certainty in reality, 100,000 Dharma treasures burst forth from one's heart. Commenting on 89, therefore, by gaining expertise through hearing, contemplating, and meditating on the way the true truths actually are, one finally sees for oneself the ultimate, the unity of the two truths, in the sense of seeing that which cannot be seen. Here we're talking about that which lies beyond the ordinary notions of subject and object. It's not an object to be perceived, but it's simply the absence of blindness. So that's where we call that the seeing that which cannot be seen. When this happens, just as the outer husks of beans and rice are removed in order to obtain their essence, one knows how to endeavor in all the skillful means to attain the liberation spoken of by the Buddha. Ultimately, one attains the unity of the two truths, and what one realizes is a single basic space of phenomena. This is what we call then the Dhammadhatu, the Chökyi Yin. Khenpo says, there is nothing that is not included in that in this single ultimate realization. The supplement to the Guhyagarbha Tantra states, just like all the rivers flow into the great ocean, all aspects of the yanas that lead to liberation are encompassed by self-knowing awareness, the king that realizes equality. It is the great skillful means that realizes the unsurpassable ultimate. And the Dzogchen Tantra, the all-creating monarch, the Kunche Gyalpo, says, actually, there is only one yana, but it arises as 9 yanas, all of which are encompassed by Dzogchen, the great completeness. Commenting on 90 then, the Kimbo says, therefore the Sugatas, the holy Buddhas who have reached lasting happiness, know which skillful means to use for systematically taming students according to their styles and capacities. By endeavoring in all the methods of the teachings, one reaches the end of the path, omniscient Buddhahood. So these skillful means are said to be a genuine path. This is the reason one experiences irreversible devotion for one's teachers and their teachings, to the point where an army of 1 billion demons could not steal one's confidence away. So on the basis of this insight, there is the capacity to benefit others, and one has this confidence. Also, like it says in the Longchen Nyingtik root verses, the Vajra root verses, it says, even if there was a 100 siddhas, there was a 100 siddhas and 100 scholars and 1,000 siddhas that came to contradict one would not one would not lose one's confidence in any way. One would have nothing to clarify. So that kind of confidence. Then it says 91, essentially the fundamental natural state is the union of emptiness and compassion. By truly realizing what this means, one attains and actualizes the fruition which is supreme, naturally occurring timeless awareness, free from dwelling in either cyclic existence or peace, as it says in the Prajnaparamita Sutra. For one's own sake, one is liberated in the state of being where there is no need to end samsara on the one side and remain in nirvana of the other. So that's where one spontaneously benefits both self, having ended samsara, and benefiting other, as one doesn't remain in nirvana. As the Vijayadhara Garadorja says, awareness, which is not established as anything, arises in various ways and is completely unobstructed. All apparent existence arises in the sphere of the Dharmakaya, and the arising itself is liberated in its own space. So this we have at the beginning of the teachings of the Mipham Rinpoche. And then it says, then for the sake of others, the beings who have not realized this, unending great compassion effortlessly arises and naturally pervades all directions and times without limit. One's enlightened activity are spontaneously present, all pervasive and everlasting, causing sentient beings to be established on the path, to actualize the path, and to reach the end of the path. Okay. So I think we'll stop here today, and then my intention is then to complete the text next time. So maybe next time, just make sure that you don't have to rush off just on the hour. I think we might go slightly longer, but I'm not sure. Depends really. Okay, we'll see if there's any questions. Oh, no questions. Perfectly clear. This is clear indication of the sublime audience. what we're talking about here is perfectly crystal clear. That's great. And again, joking aside, even if it's not crystal clear, obviously in terms of our direct experience, then that there's some sense of the validity of what's being stated here. This is so valuable. And then we can kind of see that what is the point? What's the objective of this study? Where are we heading? Where are we heading in terms of the path? And that's where just hearing these sort of statements, like the last quote here from Garab Dorje, something that just gives a tremendous joy and inspiration in the nature of the path. So, so as such, then, just rejoicing really in the scope of what we're studying here it's also good. Yeah. Yes, exactly. There's a lot of blessing, so much blessing. So we have, of course, a tremendous resource in this work because we have Mipham Rinpoche's own text, we have the Khenpo's authoritative commentary, and of course, what one so often does in the tradition is substantiate whatever has been said with quotes from the masters of the past and quotes from the Buddha. Are you having fun? Yes, I don't know if we would call it fun, but certainly this is a joyful occasion. So you could say being in the company of great sages like this is something profoundly delightful, right? So I guess it falls in the department of fun. Anyway, this is the season of making merry, right? We're going into the Christmas seasons. Please don't be annoyed with materialism. Practice this as an opportunity for generosity. Go along with the fun, with the merry. This is a great time for generosity. So I hope everyone is having a good time. Yeah. Here's cheers with some rooibos tea. Cheers to everyone here. Okay, if there's brain fun, yes. Well, a bit more than brain fun, hopefully, but yes, we start from that place, and then it sort of permeates our whole being in our heart, right? Anyway, thank you very much for being present here, and we'll conclude, and shall see you again next week. Through all our births, wherever we may be born, may we be endowed with the 7 good qualities of the higher realms. As soon as we're born, may we meet with the Dharma and have the freedom to practice it properly. At that time, may we please the holy gurus and practice the Dharma throughout the day and night. Realizing the Dharma and accomplishing its essential meaning, may we cross the ocean of existence in that life. Thoroughly teaching the holy Dharma in this world, may we never tire of accomplishing the benefit of others. By this vast benefit of others, without partiality or bias, may all attain Buddhahood together. Okay, thank you very much.